just want to talk about a couple of things I've seen lately. A couple of comments I've been getting from people on comments I've left on other channels. Now what you saw there, it's only about half my property. For those of you who don't know, there's such a thing as a merry think. Now, in essence, this is the solidly held belief by some YouTube viewers that essentially everywhere else in the world runs the same way as America does. And if they don't, they all want to be exactly like America. And it also, like, they just have real issues seeing outside of their own country. And don't worry, there's people down in the capital here which are much the same. They go to East Timor next door, that is a third world country, and think that they just go down to the hardware store and help everybody build a house, only to realise that it's an absolute shitstorm to even get a box of screws, let alone walk in a hardware store and buy a whole shit ton of timber. But a merry think also usually contains the concept that America is the top of the world and basically always will be, and that everybody wants to immigrate to America. Let me tell you, if you're in Australia, you'll think everybody wants to immigrate to Australia. Man of blooming boat people and that we've had turn up here, you don't want to know. This whole big shock and horror at that kid turned up on a beach, a little boy dead on a beach on Turkey. Oh, don't worry, we've had that happen stacks of times with kids, adults, and the whole bloody lot. And it happens, 1 week, and then it happens 2 weeks later. Other people are entrenched in this thinking that the world in which they live is the world in which everybody is forced to live. But they get these certain ideas, just getting a bit of rubbish wood here, that they sort of stick in as part of their worldview. And I've seen a lot of different things. One of them was even a National Geographic article whereby everything was counted in barrels of oil, including what it takes to get a certain amount of beef. For every XYZ of beef, it takes this many barrels of oil. Blah, blah, blah. Amongst some of these people, there seems to be an idea that everything has to be done on grid. That may be an American concept. That everything has to be... I mean, this is with a lot of people in general, not just Americans. But everything has to be paid for, and you're trapped. You're caught between a rock and a hard place because everything in life has to be paid for. Everything. And when you try and show them something otherwise, like, say I just say, well, you might be in the city, you don't really have this option. I can understand that. But I have a shitload of trees, most of which are dying. That's just the one dreaming house. There's another whole bunch down further that I sometimes show. And my heating, well, it cost me essentially nothing. Almost nothing. This particular person I've been having a heated conversation with can't believe the concept that stuff may cost you almost nothing. Okay, it cost me a quarter of a gallon worth of petrol and a little bit of bar oil and blah, blah, blah. But essentially, it costs nothing to heat my home. Not that it gets terribly cold in Australia, but I know of people who, well, a woman at work, she pays over $1,000 every 3 months for her electricity bill. You may pay a similar amount in the States, you may pay more, you may pay less. And if I was to show some of these people a wood heater, they would find every way in the book to try and tell me that they would try to find justifications that their worldview already holds in order to hold their worldview solid. In other words, if they believe that stuff costs money to do anything and everything, well, you go ahead and you show them otherwise. This particular person I'm arguing the toss with, I tell him I get more or less free meat. And he says, stop with the bullshit already, because you've got to pay for their feed, so how can it be free if you're paying for their feed? You probably can't even see, but there's a few sheep over there. As I said, what I showed before, and I'm showing now, that's only half my property. They don't need feed, they don't need grain. In fact, they strip the shit out of this. They absolutely love the stalks on these, and they even eat those. And I had a massive patch of these, and they tore all those out. You got to change your thinking pattern a little bit. But some people are so scared to break their worldview that if I said that I can get wood for free, the first thing they'll do is go, oh, wood isn't for free. The flue kit costs $600. They'd probably find one that costs $800. And then they point out a $3,500 or $5,000 wood heater and say, see, that's all pointless because I wouldn't spend that in ages on heating. Hey, the wood heater I got was second-hand. It's a proper commercial manufactured one, you know, to be used in a home, like made by a proper industry. It's got all the past certifications and everything on a little decal on the back of it. And sure, it might be built in the mid-80s or late 80s by the looks of it, but it was $150. And I'll tell you what, the flue definitely wasn't $600. This is the thing, some people they've got to stick to their worldview, and even if you show them that things are cheaper, that you can live off grid, they will fight it like a dog because it affects their worldview, regardless of the fact that if they embraced it, you might just about save them financially. But their worldview is more important than dropping their living costs to only a quarter of what they are right now, with a few pretty straightforward steps. Now, as you can see, I don't have much water at the moment. It's a drought. Not much you can do. It's a green drought. One of those ones where there's enough water to make things green, but not enough to actually fill your dams. It appears I have some more wire I missed. But this is the thing, you know, these sheep live off all this. The road up here, there's a section, oh, you can almost see it if I had a better camera, right through there, which dips down slightly. Now, many years ago, my uncle realised that this particular patch of the property was always wet in winter. But what there is a slight dip over there, and water runs off the road down through here, and makes this area very wet, and henceforth, he dug this big shitstorm. I have somebody at work tell me that they tried to grow veggies, and by the time you buy all the sprays and this and the that and every other bloody thing, it's really not worth it. And so they continue to buy cabbages, $5 each. I'm sure there's a certain subscriber who may want to say something, who knows that it's not like that because they are a bit more of an expert. I also see that a lot of people decide, say for instance, you get a cat. I mean, this thing cost me nothing. And I'll tell you what, with a cheap flipping cat food that I'm feeding her, and the fact she goes murdering every rabbit left, right and centre, and then snoops up in the roof space just to see if she can get some mice as well, doesn't cost much to feed this cat and the other tabby cat. And if I really wanted to go hardcore, I could make it almost nothing to feed them by setting up cages outside and literally breeding rabbits. The other thing which I have considered on and off on occasion, is growing grain, because this grew barley, and I can remember when this entire front paddock right back to my house grew barley. In fact, we grew onions commercially on this same land. And in my father's place, also peas, and would you believe it, for about 3 years running, only over about an acre in size, his cousin grew carrots. Oh, but you need the fertiliser, you need the this and that. They never used one sprinkling of fertiliser, ever. And yet we had enough onions grown on this place to, well, sell them on a commercial scale. And in fact, we've got receipts from very big vegetable and grocery concerns where we have sold absolute shit tons of onions, and it's a receipt of receiving those onions. We were dealing with literally tons and tons of onions straight off this place, no fertiliser. So many people are tied up in all this stuff. I got another guy who wants to argue the toss about Bitcoin. I told him that said power system was very unreliable. I mean, it's all right now, but until 2 years ago or thereabouts, the power went out bloody 56 times in 1 year in this town. And the internet's not terribly great. And I said, so if we've got to use the internet and need computers on powered by electricity at every place that I have to buy stuff in order to buy my fuel in Bitcoin, what happens when the internet crashes? What happens when the power goes off? As it was a while back, a couple of years ago, 56 times in this town. How the hell am I going to buy fuel? And then, of course, when the power comes back on, or the internet server takes a dump and reconnects, then everybody's going to be ramming at the people at the supermarket, the people at the friggin' fuel station, the people at the takeaway shops, the people at the... everything will be hammering the shit out of it, and may cause it to crash a second time. To that he said, well, you need to buy more gasoline and pay your internet bill more frequently. I said, you dickhead, we're not talking about me taking on Bitcoin, because just one person having Bitcoin is pointless. And I'm off grid, primarily solar, not generator, so I don't need to buy more gasoline for a generator. And this is the whole point. When I talk about the power going off 56 times in 1 year, I don't mean my off-grid system. I mean these stinking things down here. That on-grid power system. Because at the end of the day, if Bitcoin's got to be taken on, it's pointless for one person to take it on. You've got to have the entire community to take it on. And most of the community is running off unreliable power and unreliable internet. Oh, you've got to pay your internet bill for it. What's that got to do with it? I go on and I use the free Wi-Fi at the library. Oh, that's free. It's going to be tacky. No, in actual fact, it's the formerly government-owned telco. 2/3 of it's public-owned. It may be fully public-owned now. I'm not too sure. But it's the, you know, your Marbell, so to speak. Telecom Australia turned into Telstra. That's what the government uses. The government doesn't spare any expense. They go for the best of the best. So the government free Wi-Fi is actually running through the best of the best. Not the cheap ass one that crashes every 5 minutes, but the best of the best. But all the same, it still crashes every 40 minutes. And sometimes it'll cut out for only a few seconds, and other times it cuts out for 5 minutes altogether. But if it cuts out for those few seconds when you're doing a Bitcoin transaction, then what? This guy comes from the States, where his internet's fine and his power never goes out, puts on the assumption that it's the same with everybody everywhere else and worldwide, therefore the whole world can take on Bitcoin. Well, maybe you better go and look at the power lines in Vietnam and Pakistan. They don't call them birds' nests for nothing. I mean, they really look like birds' nests. And if you're in a country area in Pakistan, you'll be lucky if the power stays on for 3 hours a day. In an entire 24-hour period, you may get 3 hours of power. It's a bit better in the city, but it still cuts in and off and in and off in the city. It'll go for half an hour or maybe an hour and come back on, but they tend to have a go at keeping it going. But if you're out in the country area in Pakistan, holy smoke, it's a good day if you can get electricity to run for 3 hours a day. The rest of the world is not like the States. Therefore, Pakistan would be hopeless adopting Bitcoin. And I'm in a first world Western country, and half the trouble with this thing is that, well, you know, we're gung-ho and getting plenty of immigrants and plenty of people to fill this country, but a lot of people don't know that 80% of this country is desert or semi-desert. That's right. And I mean, it's like the sand dunes in friggin' Saudi Arabia and Dubai in some of these areas. There's already a water problem in this country, let alone more population. But the biggest thing they stuff up with is they haven't had the infrastructure to keep up with it. The capital near me ranks in amongst about the top 4 of the world's worst traffic congested cities in regards to average speed that you can manage. There's a particular freeway they refer to as the Monash car park because it's so backed up all the damn time. The population's come in, but they haven't had the infrastructure to go quick enough to catch up with it. Let's face it, I'm off grid. There wasn't even a phone connected here, and yet I'm 45 minutes from the capital. Work that shit out. There's an entire town up through there that doesn't have a single bloody power line. They've got phones, landline phones. Cell phones don't work worth a shit up there. They're only just hanging on where I am, the cell phones. And they don't have any power at all up there. That's an entire town. Might be a first world country, but we really dropped the ball on infrastructure, let me tell you that. And the other thing is such a sparse population, like so few people over such a large area. There's some areas, you know, it's just not economically viable to even build roads into some of these areas or seal those roads that are in those areas. I've seen videos of guys taking, trucking out supplies out of the outback. Oh, wouldn't it be better to do it by rail? Dude, you've got an area there that's about 1/5 the size of the United States with a total population of 200,000, and that area is actually majority black people who aren't even interested in white man's ways, and unless there's a welfare check coming. That's called the Northern Territory. 200,000 people, and it's around about 1/6 or 1/5 the size of the United States. I shit you not. Can you justify building a train line a couple thousand miles out to there? I don't think so. They do actually have one that goes from the top to the bottom. But anything that's off that a bit, nah. But anyway, just wanted to put it out there that just because in the States there might be a lot of people living off grid, or a lot of people have to buy feed to make things happen, it doesn't necessarily run like that here. Those sheep, which you probably still can't see as the sun's going down, don't need any stuff bought from outside this place. We gave them drench, and well, basically there's no more tapeworms and shit got out of them. There's no eggs of tapeworms in the soil, and that's it. And they're basically raised organic because we don't need to use that shit. We don't even bother with ear tags. What for? You know, it's not like we've got that big a flock that we've got to work everything out, inside out, back to front. You know, a couple of elastrator rings and about half a gallon of fuel for a motorbike. We actually used to round them up entirely on hand, by hand. And that's basically it for consumables. It's pretty much it. Occasionally, and maybe this year, we might use a salt lick, which is like a mineral block for when they're not getting terribly good nutrition, which is usually a problem during drought. But That's it. Other farms grow their own crop and feed to the cows. I could grow my own crop and feed it to mice and feed it to these to keep kitty cats fed entirely off grain that I've grown off my own place, fed to mice, then they eat the mice. Or rats, or chickens, or guinea pigs, or rabbits, whatever. Around where I work, there's a lot of crop put in. In fact, they even put crop across the road from where I was showing before, where I was pointing to the power lines over in that other paddock. Actually, I'm wrong. It's the one diagonally across, I think. Anyway, long story short, it's a very, very, very large battery hen concern. I'm not really supposed to say this, which is probably why this is coming on the end of the video, so certain people who wouldn't want me saying it aren't going to see it. It's around about $70 million operation, give or take. That's about the value of the place. They have a major contract with a major supermarket line. The way they got that contract was to be able to drop the price a little bit. How do they drop the price? The vast majority of what they feed their chickens is their own damn crop that they've planted over there, that they've planted up the road there. Oh, but you got to buy food. Oh, it's not free, you got to buy feed. Well, they've bought diesel, but then like I was saying in my biodiesel video, don't know if you can see it. No, you can't. There's a bit over there as well. A bit more canola. I didn't realise that. But like I was saying in the biodiesel video, there's a guy there who's wiped out all his diesel costs by making his own biodiesel from his own canola. Some people are stuck in this paradigm of their own that you've got to buy everything. Everything costs money. Nothing's worth it because it's just cheaper to go buy it at the supermarket. It may be if you live in the city. You've probably got no other option if you live in the city. When you're out here in off-gridville, sheep running around, almond trees growing, you don't have to live under the same paradigm as everybody else because you've got what you need to heat your home. You got what you need to feed yourself. I've got plum trees. Well, that's the top of one right there. Edible weeds if you're a real nut job. That stinging nettle tastes like shit. But it is technically edible. And you don't have to live the way that everybody else believes they live because they're so locked into that paradigm. Anyway, this video's gone on for probably 20 minutes or so we'll leave it at that.